What if I told you the story of America isn't what you were taught in school? All right, now sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and let's dive into the true story of the great America. But before we dive into this, if you have not hit that subscribe button, kindly do so now, so you don't get carried away in this mind-blowing discovery. It helps this channel grow to serve you better.
Before European ships appeared, this land was alive, a continent of forests, deserts, rivers, and countless nations. Herds of bison thundered across the plains, eagles soared above, and people thrived in harmony with the land. The first Americans were not one people, but hundreds of nations. The Haudenosaunee in the east, the Pueblo in the southwest, the Tlingit and Haida in the northwest, each with unique cultures and deep ties to the earth. They built cities, traded across vast distances, and honored the wisdom of their elders. Their societies valued community, reciprocity, and respect for nature. This was not an empty wilderness, but a homeland shaped by generations. The history of this land began with the first footprints, the first stories, and the first prayers to the rising sun. Soon, this world would face a challenge that would change it forever. In 1492, Columbus's arrival marked a turning point. Not a discovery, but a collision of worlds. Europeans brought new technologies, animals, and ideas, but also diseases that devastated native populations. Entire nations vanished, their knowledge and traditions lost. The land grew quieter, its ancient voices silenced by invisible killers. Encounters were sometimes cooperative, but often defined by conflict and misunderstanding. Europeans saw land as property. Native peoples saw it as sacred. Settlers pushed inland, making and breaking treaties, turning the Americas into a battleground for European rivalries. Native nations were pitted against each other, destabilizing a world already reeling. The promise of a new beginning for some was built on the dispossession of others. Along the Atlantic, 13 English colonies took root, each with its own character. New England's Puritans sought religious purity. The Mid-Atlantic welcomed diversity. The South built plantations on enslaved labor. Colonists faced hardship, disease, and conflict with native peoples, but also found opportunity and independence. Enlightenment ideas of liberty and rights spread, challenging the authority of the British Crown. When Britain imposed taxes without consent, cries of "no taxation without representation" rang out. In 1776, the colonies declared independence, proclaiming all men are created equal and entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The revolution was a test. Could a nation be built on ideals, not bloodlines? The war that followed would decide if those ideals could endure. The promise of equality was bold, but its reality would be fiercely contested. The new nation was born in hope and contradiction. Its story was just beginning. After independence, the United States struggled to govern itself. The Articles of Confederation failed, so delegates met in Philadelphia to draft the Constitution, a blueprint for a government of checks and balances ruled by "we, the people." Yet the Constitution was built on compromise and contradiction. It protected slavery, counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person, and excluded native nations and women from its promises. The ideals of liberty and equality were not for all. The Constitution's promise was immense, but so was its hypocrisy. The nation's founding document set the stage for centuries of struggle over who truly belonged. The fight to define "we the people" had only begun. With a new government, Americans looked west, driven by manifest destiny, the belief in a divine right to expand. Pioneers, prospectors, and farmers poured into new territories, but this expansion meant removal and suffering for native peoples. The trail of tears and broken treaties marked a pattern of violence and loss. As the nation grew, so did its divisions over slavery. Each new state reignited the battle, free or slave. Compromises delayed conflict, but the question of liberty versus slavery pushed the nation toward crisis. The dream of expansion exposed the country's deepest fault lines. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 was the breaking point. Southern states, fearing for slavery's future, seceded and formed the Confederacy. War erupted at Fort Sumter, a brutal conflict that tore the nation apart. The Civil War was fought over two visions, a union of freedom or a confederacy built on slavery. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation made the war a fight for human liberty. African American soldiers joined the Union cause, fighting for their own freedom. In 1865, the Union prevailed, slavery was abolished, but the cost was immense. Reconstruction aimed to rebuild and integrate freed people, but progress met fierce resistance. The war preserved the nation, but left open the question, what kind of nation would it be? The struggle for equality was far from over. The wounds of war would shape America for generations. After the Civil War, America transformed again as millions of immigrants arrived from Europe and Asia. They sought opportunity, fleeing hardship and persecution, and fueled the nation's industrial boom. Cities exploded in size, factories churned, and inventions changed daily life. For a few, it was an age of great wealth. For many, it meant crowded slums and dangerous work. Immigrants faced prejudice but built vibrant communities, blending old traditions with new American identities. Labor unions and populist movements rose to challenge inequality and demand reform. The gap between rich and poor tested the nation's ideals. America struggled to reconcile its agrarian past with its industrial future. The promise of opportunity was real, but so were the challenges. The nation was being remade, by newcomers, by cities, and by the fight for fairness. The 20th century was a battle to expand the meaning of we the people. Women won the right to vote in 1920, after decades of struggle. African Americans faced segregation, but the civil rights movement challenged injustice with courage and nonviolence. Landmark laws dismantled legal segregation, but the fight for equality continued. Latino farm workers, Native Americans, and LGBTQ+ Americans organized for their rights, each movement adding a new chapter to the nation's story. America's contradictions, liberty and slavery, opportunity and inequality, remained central. The nation's promise was not a gift, but a goal to be fought for by every generation. The story of America is unfinished, written in classrooms, courtrooms, and streets. It is a continuous march toward a more perfect union, and it is a story written by all of us.